Have you ever stood before a mountain and felt something stir deep within you? An unspoken conversation, a pulse that seems older than yourself. Mountains, in their immense and silent presence, communicate in ways that words cannot capture. They speak a language of stillness, endurance, and timelessness, and if we learn to listen, we find lessons about life, resilience, and the unvoiced truths of our own hearts. Henry David Thoreau, the philosopher and naturalist, spent much of his life attuning himself to these silent voices, wandering into forests and climbing hills, not for conquest, but for communion, for understanding what it means to truly exist in the world. There is a quiet psychology in the mountains, a rhythm that penetrates the modern mind, saturated with noise. In Thoreau's eyes, the mountains were not merely geological formations, they were teachers. Their peaks and valleys mirrored the human soul, moments of triumph, shadows of despair, and the ongoing flow of time and change. When you stand before a mountain, notice how it demands nothing of you, yet gives everything to those willing to receive. Its silence is not emptiness, it is filled with wisdom. Psychologically, this quiet speaks to a part of us often ignored, the part that craves reflection, that fears being unheard, yet longs for connection. In mountains, we find a mirror of our own depths, and in silence, a companion for our restless thoughts. Mountains do not hurry. They do not fret over trivialities. They simply exist. This permanence, this patient presence, is what Thoreau sought to embody. And when we immerse ourselves in the landscape, we are reminded that life's pace does not always need to mirror the frantic rhythm of our daily routines. The mountains teach us that enduring does not mean struggling, that strength often resides in stillness, and that true perspective is gained not through noise, but through reflection. There is a deep emotional truth here. Our minds are often cluttered, overthinking, overfeeling, and overstimulated. Mountains offer a sanctuary where thought slows and clarity emerges. Think about the way mountains hold their ground against storms, snow, and wind. Psychologically, this is a profound lesson in resilience. Human life is filled with challenges, sudden upheavals, and forces beyond our control. Mountains withstand this, not by resisting, but by enduring. There is a message here about emotional intelligence. We cannot control everything, yet we can learn to withstand, adapt, and rise above adversity with grace. Thoreau understood that observing such endurance cultivates patience within ourselves, an empathy for life's trials, and a respect for our own capacity to remain upright amidst chaos. But mountains are not solely about endurance, they are about perspective. From the summit, the world unfolds differently. Thoreau often wrote about the importance of ascending, not just physically, but mentally, to gain a broader view. This is not about arrogance or detachment, but awareness. The peaks offer a vantage point from which one can see the connections between life's elements, the interweaving of paths, rivers, and forests that might be invisible from below. Psychologically, this teaches us about perception. The way we approach life's challenges shapes the view we have of them. Climbing a mountain is symbolic of climbing our inner struggles, confronting our fears, and gaining insight into the interconnectedness of our experiences. There is also an emotional intimacy in mountains. Thoreau noted that in solitude, surrounded by stone and sky, one becomes both observer and participant. The mountains listen silently to our joys and sorrows. Unlike human conversation, they do not judge, interrupt, or advise. This unconditional presence resonates deeply with the human psyche. Many people feel isolated, not because they are alone, but because they are unheard. Mountains offer a silent companionship, a validation that existence itself is meaningful, even without applause or acknowledgement. In this way, they remind us of the beauty of being, simply being, without pretense or expectation. Consider the metaphor of climbing. Every step, every foothold, every breath is deliberate. Mountains teach mindfulness. They demand presence. When you are on a trail, you cannot afford distraction because one misstep can have consequences. Similarly, life requires conscious engagement. We often move through our days mechanically, letting experiences pass unexamined. Thoreau urged us to pay attention, to notice the nuances of natural life, because in those small details, how the wind bends the trees, how shadows shift on the rocks, how birds navigate the thermals, we learn to navigate our own inner landscapes. Mountains also communicate in cycles. Seasons paint them in changing colors, snow blankets them, streams carve valleys, and erosion silently reshapes their form over centuries. Psychologically, this mirrors human growth. Change is gradual, sometimes imperceptible, but cumulative. Emotional healing, personal development, and self-understanding rarely happen overnight. They are like mountains, shaped by time, weathered by experience, enduring beyond what we see. Thoreau's philosophy emphasizes patience with the self, the acceptance of slow, natural transformation, and the beauty that emerges from persistence. Moreover, mountains demand humility. Standing before a towering peak, one is reminded of the vastness beyond oneself. Thoreau wrote extensively about humility, not as submission, but as awareness of one's place within a larger system. Emotional and psychological growth requires a similar stance, recognizing limits, acknowledging fears, and understanding that our individual narrative is part of a greater, interconnected story. Mountains are ancient, and they remind us that our struggles, joys, and fears, while intensely personal, are threads in a larger fabric. This awareness reduces existential anxiety and cultivates a sense of belonging to something far greater than the self. The silence of mountains is not empty. It is filled with lessons on courage. It takes courage to face solitude, to climb steep paths, and to sit quietly amidst grandeur without distraction. Courage, Thoreau suggests, is not the absence of fear, but the presence of attention, awareness, and commitment to living authentically. In our lives, we often seek comfort in constant activity or in the noise of society, avoiding the inner dialogue that challenges us. Mountains remind us that facing the self in its raw and unfiltered form is both demanding and profoundly rewarding. The sound of wind, the echo of a distant waterfall, the cry of a lone eagle, these are the voices of mountains. They are subtle yet persistent. Thoreau believed that paying attention to such details nurtures intuition, emotional sensitivity, and philosophical insight. Listening, truly listening, is a form of intelligence. It allows us to connect with the rhythms of the world, to empathize with others, and to recognize patterns in our own lives. Mountains are silent mentors, teaching the art of observation and the depth of understanding that emerges from patience and reflection. Lastly, mountains offer hope. They are a testament to endurance, change, and beauty. For Thoreau, they were a reminder that life is vast, layered, and filled with possibility. Psychologically, mountains inspire courage to overcome personal challenges, the motivation to persevere, and the reassurance that even amidst hardship, beauty and stability persist. Their silent language whispers that life, in all its complexity, is worth engaging fully, mindfully, and passionately.
To sit at the base of a mountain or to climb towards its summit is to engage in a silent dialogue with the universe. Thoreau's insight teaches us that the world is speaking constantly, and if we learn to attune ourselves, to slow down, to observe, to reflect, we may hear messages that words cannot capture. The mountains ask nothing, yet they give everything: perspective, resilience, courage, and the quiet understanding that our lives, like the mountains themselves, are part of an enduring, beautiful, and interconnected whole.
As we move further into the presence of the mountains, we begin to see that their silence is a kind of sacred language, one that transcends human speech. Thoreau often suggested that words are limited. They can describe, but they rarely convey the fullness of experience. A mountain's language is experienced rather than spoken. Its ridges, its shadows, the way the sunlight dances across its face, these are forms of communication that reach past intellect into the heart. Psychologically, this reminds us that some truths cannot be dissected in conversation or rational thought. They are understood only through presence, attention, and feeling. Imagine standing at a ridge as the sun rises, its first rays spilling across the valley, casting golden light that melts into mist. In that moment, time feels suspended. Thoreau often wrote about the importance of observing these moments of eternity, where one senses life as a continuous, flowing presence. This experience is not just aesthetically beautiful, it is profoundly healing. For those who carry grief, anxiety, or emotional fatigue, such encounters with mountains provide a sanctuary where the psyche can breathe. The mind begins to reorganize itself, emotions settle, and clarity emerges. Mountains act as a natural therapy, offering calm without prescription, guidance without judgment. One of Thoreau's central insights is the relationship between solitude and self-understanding. Mountains, by their nature, create solitude. When you climb, hike, or simply sit in their shadow, the distractions of modern life recede. Phones, emails, social obligations, and noise all fade, leaving only you and the vast world. This solitude is not loneliness, it is a fertile ground for self-reflection. Psychologists today emphasize the importance of solitude for emotional processing, creativity, and stress regulation. Mountains, therefore, are natural allies in cultivating psychological resilience. They teach us that being alone does not equate to being unloved or abandoned. Rather, it is a space where we can learn to love ourselves, to listen to our inner voice, and to reconcile our fears and desires. Thoreau's philosophy also highlights the ethical dimension of observing nature. In the presence of mountains, one develops humility and reverence for life. There is a recognition that humans are part of a larger system, that the forces shaping the mountains, wind, water, ice, and time, operate on a scale far beyond individual human concerns. Psychologically, this perspective fosters awe, which research shows is linked to increased well-being, reduced self-focus, and greater empathy. Awe reminds us that our problems, while valid, exist within a larger context, and that life's mysteries are not always ours to solve. Mountains invite us to surrender the need for control and embrace the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. Consider the metaphor of shadows and light on the mountains. From afar, peaks may appear permanent and unchanging, yet up close they reveal cracks, fissures, and the slow work of erosion. Thoreau saw these details as lessons in impermanence. Life, like mountains, is a balance of strength and vulnerability. Every human experience, loss, love, triumph, disappointment, shapes us, sometimes subtly, sometimes profoundly. Mountains, in their silent endurance, show that strength does not require perfection, it requires persistence, adaptability, and acceptance.
This understanding is central to emotional intelligence, embracing the realities of our own lives without denial or resentment. Mountains also serve as mirrors for the human heart. When faced with their immensity, we confront our fears of insignificance and mortality. Yet paradoxically, we also encounter a profound sense of connection. Thoreau often wrote about the feeling of merging with the landscape, not in a literal sense, but emotionally and spiritually. This is a reminder that existential fears, while powerful, can be tempered by perspective. Just as the mountains endure centuries of change, so too can humans endure the storms of life. Awareness of this continuity reduces anxiety and cultivates hope. Psychologically, it reinforces the principle that life is cyclical, that suffering is temporary, and that beauty and growth are constants, even when unseen. The psychological impact of mountains extends to creativity. Thoreau himself was a writer, and he frequently sought inspiration from the natural world. The sheer scale of mountains, their intricate textures, and the interplay of light and shadow stimulate the mind in unique ways. Neuroscience tells us that exposure to vast, natural spaces enhances problem solving, encourages divergent thinking, and reduces rumination, the repetitive, negative thought patterns that fuel anxiety and depression. In essence, the mountains speak to the part of us that longs for expression, insight, and the courage to explore both inner and outer landscapes. Emotionally, mountains remind us of the value of patience. Unlike human-made structures, they evolve slowly. Rivers carve valleys over millennia, glaciers shape cliffs imperceptibly, and weather slowly sculpts peaks. In a society obsessed with instant results, mountains challenge us to slow down, to accept the pace of natural processes, and to trust in our own journey. Thoreau emphasizes that self-growth and personal healing are not instantaneous, they are gradual, like the shaping of rock over centuries. This lesson resonates deeply for those who struggle with frustration, impatience, or self-criticism. Mountains teach us that patience is not passive, it is an active engagement with the unfolding of life, a trust in the process, and a recognition that growth, like erosion, is inevitable when nurtured with care. Let us also consider the emotional vulnerability mountains evoke. Standing in their shadow, one cannot help but feel small, yet this smallness is not insignificant. It is a reminder of our humility, a call to recognize the value of presence over control. Mountains encourage introspection, prompting questions like, what is my purpose? What do I truly value? How do I wish to leave a mark on the world? Thoreau believed that such reflection was essential to living deliberately, to making choices aligned with our deepest truths. Psychologically, these reflections enhance self-awareness, emotional regulation, and life satisfaction, leading to decisions rooted in authenticity rather than external expectation. Mountains, in their silence, also offer a form of emotional catharsis. The sheer immensity, the wind, the echoing valleys, they evoke feelings that words cannot contain. Tears may flow, breath may catch, laughter may erupt unbidden. Thoreau understood that nature holds a mirror to human emotion, providing both release and recognition. This cathartic effect is crucial for mental health, allowing us to process grief, anxiety, and joy in a space free of judgment. Mountains become a sanctuary, a witness to our emotional truths, and a safe container for vulnerability. Furthermore, mountains challenge us to confront fear. The climb, the rocky paths, the exposure to heights, they demand courage, focus, and trust in our abilities. Psychologically, this translates to confronting personal fears in daily life, facing uncertainty, taking risks, or expressing emotions honestly. Thoreau's philosophy encourages us to see fear not as an obstacle, but as a guide, a signal of growth, an invitation to rise, and a measure of our capacity to embrace life fully. The mountain's silent presence becomes a metaphorical coach, reminding us that fear is temporary, while the strength gained through facing it endures. There is also a spiritual dimension to the mountain's language. Thoreau often described moments where he felt a connection to something larger than himself, a universal presence, the spirit of the natural world, or a sense of divine orchestration. In modern psychology, such experiences are associated with transcendence, meaning-making, and existential fulfillment. Mountains, through their timelessness and majesty, offer a portal to this state. They remind us that life is not solely about survival or achievement, but about connection, awe, and the recognition of beauty beyond the self. Imagine a moment where you sit on a rocky outcrop, wind brushing your face, watching clouds drift across jagged peaks. In this stillness, every thought slows, every worry diminishes, and a profound sense of presence emerges. Thoreau calls this living deliberately, not being swept along by the current of daily demands, but choosing attention, depth, and awareness. This deliberate presence nurtures resilience, emotional intelligence, and peace. Mountains teach us that to truly live is to engage with life fully, without distraction, without avoidance, and with an open heart willing to receive.